Hi, today we are going to discuss the second part of two stories about flying, the third prose piece prescribed for 10th grade students from the textbook Force Flight. The title of this part is The Black Aeroplane. But before going into the details of the black aeroplane, let me tell you, I have already discussed the first part of this prose piece or this chapter, that is his first flight, in my previous video. If you have not yet watched, if you have not yet checked out my previous video on the same chapter, I highly recommend you to check it out, to watch, so that you will have a much clearer and much better understanding of this third prose piece. In the first part, that is his first flight, we learn how a young seagull who was very timid, who was very hesitant, he learned the art of flying. Finally, he learned to fly when he had no other option. Finally, when his parents left to himself completely, when he was not helped by anyone, finally he learned the art of flying. And that is to say that the necessity is the mother of invention. I highly recommend you to watch that video so that you will understand the similarity between these two stories. In fact, both of these stories deal with their, as the very title suggests, they are two stories about flying. The only difference is that the first story is the story of how a young seagull, a bird, learns to fly, and the second one is the story of a pilot. I will not go into the details of the first part in this chapter since I have already made a separate video on that. Let's straight away go to the second part, that is the black aeroplane. Before going into the text, let me tell you, this prose piece or this story is written by Frederick Forsyth. Frederick Forsyth is an English author, journalist, former spy, as well as an occasional political commentator. He is best known for writing thrillers and also for writing crime fiction. It's quite interesting to note here that before becoming a journalist, Frederick Forsyth also worked in the Royal Air Force as a jet fighter pilot. And this fact is quite interesting to know. It is because this story that we are going to learn or that we are going to read is about a pilot and his miraculous escape from a situation of danger, or from a dangerous situation. The story describes a miraculous and mysterious escape of a pilot from danger. Well, let's see what happens in this story. Let's read and understand the building blocks of the story. Let me narrate the story in my own words, and that with that background, if you go and read the text for yourself, you will have a much better and much more clear understanding of this story. Let me tell you what happens in this story. It is a story about the narrator himself. That means it's written in the first person. The narrator who was flying to England to enjoy his holiday. He was flying to England in order to enjoy his holiday along with his family. He wanted to reach England well in time so that he could enjoy a good English breakfast with his family. So he was flying his old Dakota aeroplane, or his old plane. That's what we read in the text. The narrator was flying his aeroplane over France to England. He was eager to meet his family. He was dreaming of spending a good time with his family. He was dreaming of his holiday. And as he saw, the stars were shining clear in the sky as he looked, and everything was normal, everything was fine, everything was going well. The stars were very clear and visible in the sky, means everything was very fine. Even the city, Paris, could easily be seen down below. That means the weather was very clear. There appeared to be no sign of any danger, no sign of any storm. Finally, we read in the story that he called Paris Control to get instructed about the way. And what was the instruction given by the Paris Control? He was instructed to turn 12 degrees west. So finally he followed the instruction. He turned 12 degrees west. Everything was going well. Everything was going fine. He was flying his aeroplane. His destination was his home. His destination was England, and his purpose was to enjoy his English breakfast. Well, finally he saw the storm clouds approaching, and he realized that he was in a dangerous situation. We read that Paris was about 150 kilometers behind him. So it was a huge distance, it was a long distance. It was natural for the narrator to panic. He was afraid, he was scared. He knew that it was not possible to fly up and over the storm clouds. So he had to take some decision. He was in a dangerous situation. He was confused for a moment. He did not know what to do in such a dangerous situation. As everything was fearful, as everything was, going bad for a moment, the narrator decided to risk and fly over the storm because there was no other option. Even his fuel was running short. That's what we read in the text. But everything went out of control. Even the compass was out of control. The compass as well as the other instruments, they stopped working. They were not working at all. He was unable to see outside. The plane was jumping and twisting. He had almost lost his control out of the plane. The plane was almost out of control. That's what we can say. But somehow he was trying to gain control of the plane, although it was jumping and twisting in the air. He tried to control again the Paris control, but couldn't, because the radar system or the communication system had almost ceased. He was lost in the storm. He was lost to himself, all alone. He had to do something. And then there comes a miraculous situation, a mysterious aeroplane. What was that? Suddenly the narrator saw another black aeroplane in the storm by his side. And what was interesting about this black aeroplane is that it was without lights on its wings. There were no lights on its wings. It seemed strange to him that a black aeroplane is flying in this weather condition, in this storm. But he was glad because he knew that there was someone who could possibly help him. He was glad to see another person in this storm. He realized that he was not the alone, being. He was not the, lonely being. He was not all alone in this storm. There was another aeroplane also that was flying. The pilot of this aeroplane or this plane waved at him and signaled to follow, so that he did also, because he had no other option but to follow the black aeroplane. And we read in the text that he followed also. He felt quite fearful. He was afraid, but suddenly he saw two bright lines of light in front of him. And what this light indicated, what was it? It was a runway. So he realized that he was very close to his destination. At least he was close to a runway where he could land. Whether it was a destination or not, that doesn't matter for time being. At least he wanted to make an emergency landing. He wanted to land somewhere. So he felt fearful, but suddenly he was glad to see two bright lines in front of him, and it was a runway. He was able to land safely, which gave him a sigh of relief. He felt quite, relief in his deep down in his heart. It was like a miracle for him. And then, as the climax or the conclusion of the story, we read that the narrator came out of his plane and he wanted to thank the pilot of the black aeroplane. But he was shocked to see that there was no other aeroplane, there was no other pilot. Then he decided to go to the control tower. He went to the control tower and he asked the woman sitting there, about the black aeroplane and about the pilot. Hearing his words, the woman simply laughed and said that there was no other aeroplane except his. His was the only plane up in this storm. So it was a big surprise to him. He was taken aback. He was shocked. And then, as the story ends, see, there are a few questions that this narrator leaves for us. See how this ends. I'll read the last paragraph for you. So, who helped me to arrive there safely without a compass or a radio and without any more fuel in my tanks? See, a question mark. Who was the pilot on the strange black aeroplane flying in the storm without lights? So here also is a question mark. This story ends with a question mark. It is left for us to imagine as to by whom he was helped. So there may be so many questions even striking our mind. We may be thinking, but let me tell you, it could be so many things. It could be anything. After all, it's a story. There's a possibility that it could be, a divine intervention. Although a scientific explanation for this cannot be given. But since it is a story, we can even conclude that it may be a divine intervention, or it may also have been his hallucination. his sixth sense was working. Maybe it may be another explanation for this. Whatever the case be, I leave it to you. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the black aeroplane and the miraculous escape of this pilot. Let me know in the comment section, and further, if you have any question, feel free to ask the same in the comment section. I'll be glad to answer your questions. Thanks for watching.